Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another cooking video. In the last video, of course, we made the pulled pork. I showed you how to do all that up, but I didn't make the barbecue sauce for it yet, so that's what the point of today's video is to show you guys just quickly how to make the barbecue sauce. I'll show you in a second everything that you need. I'll measure everything out. I'll leave the recipe down below if you guys want to copy it for yourself. This is just kind of, I guess, a mixture of a couple recipes that I found online, which I thought looked good and kind of had elements that I wanted to use anyways. So yeah, I'll leave all that down below, but in a second here, I won't waste any more time. We'll get right into it. I'll show you everything that we're going to be using in the barbecue sauce, and then I'll go ahead, measure everything out, tell you guys how that's done, show you how to put it together, and this should be a really quick, easy, fun video. Alright, and the ingredients for the barbecue sauce we're going to be making today is you're going to need brown sugar, some ketchup. You could also substitute tomato sauce. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Some molasses, some Worcestershire sauce, some honey, some apple cider vinegar, some paprika, some dry mustard. I'm going to be using a little bit of the same smoke seasoning that I use in the dry rub. And as an optional extra, which I'm going to put in, you guys can decide if you want to or not, I'm going to use some Sriracha Hot Sauce or any kind of hot sauce you guys have laying around if you want to kick up the heat. And also, as I mentioned with the tomato sauce, I'm going to be using some tomato paste here just to help thicken everything up, give a bit more flavor. And as I said, I'm going to be using ketchup today because I have it, but if you guys want to use either a mix of ketchup and tomato sauce or use some tomato sauce instead of ketchup, the two are pretty much interchangeable the way this recipe is going to pan out. So as I said, in a moment here, let me just go ahead and measure everything out so I can give you the exact measurements. Again, I will have a recipe down below if you guys want to just look at that for yourself. So give me a moment here to measure everything out, and then we'll get going on making the actual sauce. And one thing before I measure, guys, I forgot to mention is in the pot here on the stove, just heating up, I saved all of the liquid from the braising and the cooking of the pulled pork, because of course you have all that wonderful flavor in there. So I'm going to be cooking this down a little bit and using some of this in our barbecue sauce mix as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Some of the recipes you might find online will call for you to use water or something, which I think is good as kind of, you know, if you have nothing else laying around. But I would always recommend, if you have any liquid or whatever liquid you have left over from cooking the pulled pork previously, save that and you either use it in your barbecue sauce or use it to keep your actual meat moist when you're going to be packing it away. So just a couple minutes later, after measuring everything out, a couple seconds for you guys obviously in the video, I have everything here measured out. As you can see, there's two different containers. I have the dry and the wet. So if I start here on the dry side, in the bowl, I have 2 cups of brown sugar, 2.5 tablespoons of the dry mustard powder, and then I have 2 tablespoons each of paprika and some of the dry rub seasoning mix that I use on the pork itself, and just a little bit of fresh ground black pepper and a very, very small amount of just some fresh salt. Then over here on the wet side, we have 2 cups of ketchup, I have 1/3 cup of honey, I have 1/4 cup of molasses, 2 tablespoons of the Worcestershire sauce, and 1/2 cup of the apple cider vinegar. You guys could also use red wine vinegar if you have it. And I haven't added in yet, but I will be adding just a couple shots of the hot sauce. I don't want to make this too hot. Again, as I said, for my recipe, that's an optional extra, so I don't want to give a full amount. So just pretty much put in any kind of hot sauce you like until you get the heat that you are looking for in your own personal sauce. So now that we have everything measured out, everything's ready to go, we're going to go ahead and start to cook down this sauce. Now, with this barbecue sauce, you are going to want to cook it just with some of the ingredients in here, such as the molasses. But there are other recipes, or you can modify the recipe where you can do a no-cook barbecue sauce. So, for instance, if you were to take out the molasses from this recipe, you wouldn't have to cook it down. You could just mix all the ingredients together as they are, and then just whisk it really, really well, either by hand or in a mixer, and let it go. But for this one, we want to let it cook, again, because I am going to be adding the liquid that I cooked the pork in. Just want to make sure everything's nice and cooked, so there's going to be no issues there, and all the flavors will blend together that little bit better. So, that being said, we have our pot full of all the wet ingredients on the stove. We're going to turn it up to just under a high heat. We're going to let the heat start to build in there. We'll give that maybe about 30 seconds just to heat up. Then we'll grab our dry ingredients, and we'll just toss everything into the pot and just start to stir it in. Gently stir it in. You don't want to get sauce and ingredients everywhere, so we'll just gently stir those all in together. At this point, we can go ahead and turn our heat down to medium. Let everything stir in together And pretty much, guys, once you have everything stirred in, you know, make sure your sugar is all dissolved and there's no real clumps in there. Pretty much you want to leave it on a medium heat. You want to let it come up to a, well, put it on a higher heat, let it come to a boil, put it down to a simmer for about 15-20 minutes, turn it off, let it cool, and that's pretty much your sauce done right there. So we'll just go a little bit here. I'll stir it so you guys can hopefully start to see the little chunks melting. I don't know if you can. If it's not working so well with a spoon, go ahead and grab yourself a whisk so you can get in there and kind of help break everything down a little bit better. Now, as I did mention before, I am going to be using the liquid, so as I said, half cup at a time. I'm just going to scoop and pour some of that liquid in, and then I'm going to let my sauce come up to a boil here. So that was a cup right there. I'm going to let my sauce come up to a boil. We'll keep stirring it, and then we'll just check for the thickness. Again, you don't want your sauce to be super thin, you don't want it to be super thick. I'll show you guys at the end kind of where a happy medium is. Pretty much for any kind of sauce like this, the general rule is if it can stick to the back of a spoon and not, you know, just slide all the way off, you're generally good for the amount of thickness. But again, it could be a personal preference. You don't want to go too thick, especially if you're going to be putting it over something like a pulled pork, as we're doing with this one, because then it's not gonna mix through very easily. So like I said, you want that happy medium between kind of thin but also thick that'll hold this out together. So I'm not going to bore you guys. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to let this come to the boil and stir it up, and then once it comes to there, I'll come back and we'll end off the video. It's been about 16 minutes later. My sauce has been at a simmer for that time. It hasn't gotten super thick, but we also have to factor in the cool down period. But as I mentioned, at this time, it's a good time to check on your progress. So I'm going to shut the heat off for a second here. And if I lift it up to the camera here, hopefully you guys will be able to see. You can see if I dip the spoon in, it coats the back of the spoon pretty well. It has a little bit of drip on there. So at this point, I think, I've also tested it for seasoning. I'm happy with it. So as I said before, while it's going, give it a quick stir. Try it every once in a while, even when you're happy with the taste of it and where it's at for you personally, you're good to go ahead and stop. So with that being said, it's boiled a little bit. I'm going to let it cool off now, and also when it cools, it should hopefully thicken up a little more. If it still needs a little bit more time, I can throw a bit more ketchup or something in there to help thicken it. But at that point, that's pretty much it. We'll just go ahead and let it cool off, and then you can either take it straight from your pot, put it onto your meat, your pulled pork, whatever you're making it for, or you can package it up somewhere. If you want to put it in a squeeze bottle to have in the fridge to grab out and use whenever you want, or in a jar, wherever you want to store it. Just make sure you put it in something that can be sealed up nicely, and put it in the fridge as you want to keep it there, and it'll keep for a fairly long time. Obviously, you don't want to let it sit for too long, just like anything, but you know, with the way it's been cooked down now, it will be pretty shelf stable for at least a couple of months if you keep it sealed properly and in the proper fridge. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video pretty much, guys. As I said, hopefully just a quick little video rundown showing you guys how to make the barbecue sauce and kind of the little quick tips and tricks. As I did mention before, again, not to ramble on too much, but I will, in the description below, leave a copy of the recipe for exactly what I just did here if you guys want to copy it yourselves. As a quick side note, with the extra liquid from the cooking of the pork, I ended up as a total putting in there, I think, about 3.5 cups of the liquid in there. So the one, I guess, caveat with that is that, you know, when you cook your pulled pork at home, you might not have that much liquid, but that's what I did for mine. So obviously you can play that off with yours, and again, you can use that to help balance out your thickness level of your sauce as well. So obviously if your sauce is too thick, put a little bit of that in, whisk it in, it'll thin it down. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please give a big thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel for more, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.